Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. It is February 28th, 2026, and I wanted to do something a little different today. I typically write blogs on astrological content and reflections, and this time I thought I would create an audio for it. And I've been sitting with something for the last like couple weeks, I would say, and I wanted to share it not just as an explanation, not as a political stance, but really as a spiritual reflection. And if you're grieving, overwhelmed, or feeling the intensity or feeling the intensity of the world right now, I just want to acknowledge that first. This is not about reducing real events into symbolism. It's about finding context in moments that can feel really destabilizing. So I just invite you to take a few breaths here with me right now, just to find a moment of stability, of regulation. So go ahead and just inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and then exhale for a count of 7. So as you're ready, inhale, pause, and exhale. Inhale again for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and then exhale for a count of 7. One more time on your own. So what I'm sharing is something that moved through me as I sat with the astrology of this moment, and it also came to me in a few conversations that I've had with other astrologers, and in conversations, and also in a couple of circles that I was in, and it really kind of refined today. I thought I'd sit down and just try and just get it out. So I did. And so here I am. And so if this reflection resonates, stay with me. If not, that's okay too. I always like to say, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Um, and so I want to acknowledge something, that real people are grieving, real families are navigating shock and loss. And so nothing I share here is meant to reduce anyone's life into symbolism or explanation. Astrology for me is a lens for spiritual processing, not justification, not a prediction, not a verdict. Astrology has been a life companion for me as I've navigated my own dark nights of the soul, and has been a great tool to help me navigate those times, especially around grief and pain and suffering. And so again, this is more of a community reflection of what came through me, and I felt called to share it. Because right now we're living in a threshold moment. And so since November 24, Pluto has been moving through Aquarius. And I did a presentation on this a few years ago. You can find that on my YouTube channel. And so we'll visit just some of the basics. Pluto is the archetype of the underworld. It exposes what has been hidden for generations. It dismantles what has been calcified, and it reveals where power has been distorted. Now, in Aquarius, Pluto turns its gaze towards the collective. Institutions, systems, enforcement, technology, governance. the architecture of authority itself. And Pluto in Aquarius does not gently reform, it reveals. Where hierarchy has replaced humanity, where control has been confused with protection, and where power has been hoarded instead of stewarded. And alongside that long transit, we recently experienced a new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius. And so eclipses interrupt patterns, they accelerate timelines, and they expose the shadow material. Aquarius governs collective consciousness, so we the people, community, networks, the shared field, AI. And now we're moving towards a full moon eclipse in Virgo, and so that will happen on March 3rd, I believe. And so Virgo asks something very different. And as a Virgo rising, I'm familiar with the energy of Virgo, of service, devotion, and Aquarius expands awareness outward. Virgo brings it back to the body. So how do you live with what you believe? How do you practice it daily? How do you purify what is reactive? And how do you serve without ego? So those are some of the reflections around this. And at the same time, Saturn and Neptune met at the 0 degrees of Aries. It's the very first degree of the zodiac. It's an ignition point. It's the world axis point. And now we've not seen this particular placement at this degree. And one of my teachers and mentors says in around 6,000 years. So this is a very significant timeline and cycle that we're in right now. So let's just break that down a little bit. Saturn represents structure, authority, patriarchy, discipline, fear, rigidity. Neptune dissolves illusion. It softens boundaries. It disillusions what once felt solid. And so when Saturn and Neptune meet, illusion and structure collapse into one another. And when they meet at the 0 degrees of Aries, Aries being the archetype of the warrior, identity, masculine force, something archetypal is dissolving. The old story of masculinity, the version rooted in domination, the version that confuses aggression with strength, the version that mistakes control for leadership. When identity dissolves, it can feel destabilizing. Systems react, individuals react, the collective nervous system reacts. And so just days before that eclipse, Mars squared Uranus, a volatile alignment. And so Mars is action, it rules Aries. Mars is action, it's anger, force, and Uranus, the ruling planet of the eclipse in Aquarius. Uranus is shock, disruption, sudden ignition, expect the unexpected. And so when these two meet in tension, unconscious impulses can erupt quickly and very, very unpredictably. And we've seen that energy rippling out across the global field. Whether we name it specific events or not, we can feel it. And so this is really a pivotal moment, not because the sky is dramatic, but because unconscious force is destructive, individually, collectively, systemically. And so here's the revolution. It's also revolution. Uranus is also revolution. If Pluto in Aquarius is exposing distorted power, then the work is not only out there, it's also in here. In our nervous systems, in our reactions, in our leadership, in our communities. The toxic masculine is domination without accountability. impulse without wisdom, power without heart. The sacred masculine or divine masculine is protection, courage anchored in integrity, strength in service to life. Saturn in Aries will demand maturity. Neptune in Aries will dissolve illusions about what strength truly is. And Pluto in Aquarius will continue exposing where institutions have confused enforcement with care. Well, what has moved me most deeply is not just the rupture, but it's the response. Here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, I have watched just unbelievable acts of care. I've watched neighbors organize with just breathtaking speed. I've seen mutual aid networks activate. I've witnessed people show up not in chaos, but in care and compassion. Food being shared, space being held, funds being donated for those who are sheltering in place that have lost their income because they're sheltering in place. And so much more. Presents being offered. That is Aquarius embodied. So not rebellion for destruction, but collective intelligence, relational power. We, consciousness awakening. So this is what I mean when I say the matriarchal field is rising. And I've heard this said a number of times now with community organizers at my place of work, amongst the parent community. The matriarchal field is rising. Now, let's be very clear here. Women, it's not women ruling over men. That's not what this is, despite the potential distortion of that. But what matriarchal field is, it's a relational intelligence replacing hierarchy, community replacing domination, interdependence replacing isolation. The matriarchy organizes, it nourishes, it decentralizes power so it can't be hoarded again. And I have watched strangers, neighbors, become protectors of one another. And that feels revolutionary. People who didn't know each other before have just come together with this central idea of community in a way that has probably not happened in eons. So we're in a Saturn-Neptune moment collectively. And the illusion that systems are inherently just is dissolving. The belief that authority equals morality is thinning and the shadow is visible. And when shadow becomes visible, we have a choice. If we do not examine our own unconsciousness, it will act out. If we don't mature our anger, it will externalize. If we do not integrate our fear, it will seek control. So the most revolutionary thing that we may do in this moment is raise our own consciousness. I'm not talking about spiritual bypassing. I'm not talking about disengaging. I'm not talking about collapsing into despair, but mature, heal, organize, serve, protect, discern. Virgo will help us purify what is reactive. Aquarius will ask us to think collectively, and Aries will ask us to act with courage. Pluto will ask us to evolve. I'm not sharing this to explain tragedy. I'm sharing this because it's easy to lose hope. It's easy to feel helpless, to feel pained by the suffering of others, to be triggered by the shadow we see everywhere, to believe that the world is only what appears on the surface. And I felt that over the last few weeks, several weeks, I've felt that. I felt that threaten my own hope. And so for me, reaching for archetype gives context, not to escape, but just context. And it reminds me that collapse can precede maturation, that dissolution can precede birth, and that exposure can lead to evolution. Finding higher meaning doesn't erase the pain. It just gives me, personally, it gives me strength to stay present with it. It moves me from fear into grounded action, from paralysis into participation, from despair into purpose, pain into purpose. And we can't fix the entire world, but we can refuse to abandon our humanity. We can refuse to numb. We can refuse to let unconsciousness run us. We can choose maturity over reactivity, community over hierarchy, protection over domination. And this moment is initiatory. The old structures are cracking, and through those cracks, something ancient and future at once is rising. We, the people. And so what we do now, what we each do now, inwardly and outward, really, really matters. And so these are some of the things that I wanted to share. I will also share this in writing, but it felt important to just come and have a face connection, a voice connection to share this. And so there was one last thing that I wanted to share here. And I can't seem to find it in this moment, but wherever you are, whatever you are feeling right now, know that you are not alone, that we are in this together, and reach out to support, lean into your communities, nourish yourself, take care of yourself, slow down. The energy is very, very fast. It's very, very quick. And so it can really impact our ability to be grounded, to stay present, to stay conscious. So when you feel that energy just kind of pulling you into reactivity or to do more, just come back to the body, take some breaths, pause, go for a little walk in nature. Give yourself time and space, because this is definitely a marathon and will need to be resourced in the coming months. And reach out to those that can offer you safe support. Okay. Thank you so much for being with me today. I'm sending you so much love and so much grace. And until next time, namaste.